You're listening to the Primal Happiness Show, a podcast dedicated to helping you thrive in this crazy modern world. Every Tuesday, we explore the nature of how our minds really work, what exactly the human animal requires to thrive, and how we can live happier and more fulfilling lives. If you're new here and haven't yet taken our free class, then there's no better place to get a jump start on reclaiming your primal happiness. It's where we'll guide you step by step through our antidote to today's modern world. Simply head on over to primalhappiness.co/antidote to get the free class and discover how to thrive without having to move to a planet that's not so crazy as ours. But now, your host, Leanne Brook-Tyler.
Hello, my beautiful people. A huge warm welcome back to the show. In today's crazy modern world, men and women are living shallow, disconnected, and unfulfilling lives. So we created the path for those who are ready to reclaim their wildness and actualize their deepest gifts. So what have we been up to in the last week? Well, the very first Unraveling the Body finished this Wednesday. That was when the last live session was. And what a wonderful experience it was. I think both for the 28 women who took part, but definitely for me personally, it ended up being such an opportunity for growth and learning for me personally, which I really wasn't expecting. The real takeaway for me was that I actually love working with bigger groups like that, which was definitely an edge for me. And then it turned out to be something I really, really enjoyed. So I very much suspect I will be running it again, and probably not until the new year, just because we've got a kind of jam-packed calendar of things we're creating over the next few months. I'll tell you about one of them in a moment, but I suspect early 2020, I will be running another Unravel the Body. So if you want to register your interest for the next one, you can do that at primalhappiness.co/unravel. So if you go there, register your details, and then when we're enrolling for the next one, you'll be one of the first to know. And as I say, we've got lots of things coming up over the next few months. And the next one is going to be the very first Waking the Wild Heart. And this is something that Jonathan and I are so excited about. It's the first program that Jonathan and I have led together for many years, 3, possibly even 4 years since we've led something like that together. It's for both men and women, singles, couples, one person from a couple, you name it. And it's going to be all about love, polarity, and intimacy. So it is going to be absolutely amazing. I can already feel it just from the early conversations Jonathan and I have been having about what we're planning, the exercises, practices, explorations, inquiries that we're going to take the people who are on that journey with us through. So it is going to be something very special. It starts in September and enrollment for it will open in the next week. We already have quite a list of people interested, and I don't actually have a place to go to register your interest. If you know you want in, just reach out and contact us. You can drop us an email at support@primalhappiness.co. Let me know that you really want to be one of the first to know, and I will make sure we come to you, because there are limited places and I suspect they're going to get snapped up fast. Anyway, really excited about that one. And on to this week's show is with Tad Hargrave. And Tad is a hippie who developed a knack for marketing and then learned how to be a hippie again. Despite years in the non-profit and activist world, he finally had to admit that he was a marketing nerd. And in the end, he became a marketing coach for hippies. Maybe it was because he couldn't stand seeing his hippie friends struggle to promote their amazing green and holistic projects. Maybe it was because he couldn't keep a 9-to-5 job to save his life. Whatever the reason, for almost a decade, he's been touring his marketing workshops around Canada, bringing refreshing and unorthodox ideas to conscious entrepreneurs and green businesses that help them grow their organizations and businesses without selling their souls. So honestly, Tad is an incredible man. I've followed his work for quite a few years, many years actually, I think, and then really he captured my interest more recently with his work around point of view marketing. So that's what we spoke about. We spoke about how spending the time distilling your point of view allows you to do business in a way that feels in alignment, ethical, and allows people to understand whether they're a good fit for what you offer. And as I said, I've really discovered how different and useful this idea of point of view is. So Jonathan and I have been using Tad's methodology recently to develop our own point of view and have found it so helpful. So I believe if you're in any kind of business, you will find this episode an really good use of your time. Let's jump in. Hello, Tad, Theodore. A huge welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
And the Theodore was because I only just discovered that's your real name, and which is kind of delighting to me. So we are here talking about something that I've only actually really discovered recently about your work, and that's going to sound stupid because I've actually followed you for years and never quite had seen the whole thing you've got around point of view marketing as clearly as I did recently. Not sure why that is, but I've devoured your ebook and it has been so helpful in a way that I'll share more about in a moment. But that's what we decided would be a really helpful topic for today's show, because I think any of our listeners who are in I'd say most kinds of businesses, but particularly a lot of our listeners are coaches, change workers. So I think it's so relevant to those kind of people. So that's what we're going to talk about. And I guess what would be really helpful, and I was saying it's a bit meta in a way because you're going to have to give your point of view in order to do this, but I'd just love you to share how you arrived at this point doing what you do around point of view marketing.
Sure. Well, one of the core metaphors I use in my work for marketing, I got from a colleague of mine, Bill Barron, which is this idea that your ideal clients are on island A, where they have some problem, symptoms, and they want to be on island B, where there's some result that they're craving. And your business is a boat that can get them from one island to the other. And of course, if you sell a product, then you're selling the boat itself, not the journey. But one day, I just remember I was teaching, and I looked at the board, and maybe it was a question somebody asked, but it just occurred to me that there were a lot of different ways to get from island A to island B. Literally, if you're in a boat going from island to island, there's a lot of different routes you could take. The short way, the long way, the choppy waters way, different seasons that you'd want to travel in, even different kinds of boats that you would use, so there was just a lot more to it. I started to realize that was missing in the maybe simplistic level of that analogy. And so, and if the journey was, let's say, weight loss, you on island A, or weight gain or whatever, you got more weight than you want. Island B, you've lost the weight. Well, damn, how many opinions are there about that? So I began to see how compelling that was in marketing. I can't even track the journey exactly, but it just grew over time as I began to see that when people could share why they do what they do the way they do it, it was very interesting. This was one of the things that grabbed me most. And marketing is probably fundamentally two things. It's building relationships and it's education. But then what are we educating people about? It's not, if we see the education of marketing as the education of here's why you should buy my product, I think this is a very ineffective, truncated, limited way of seeing marketing. But if we see the education is educating them about our perspective, our worldview, our sort of understanding, our take on the situation, this suddenly becomes very interesting because, when people are on island A, one of the most painful parts is you don't know why you're stuck there. I often say in marketing, there are these three things people need when they're in pain: empathy, context, and guidance. And the first thing, of course, is empathy. This is where you really acknowledge the problem they have. This is where you say the thing that's relevant, which is island A or island B, if they're on a journey, if it's a service, or if you're selling a product, you name the kind of boat you make. That's what makes it relevant. But then the context is really important, because hurting is just a human thing. People are in pain, and we live with it for the most part. And of course, there are certain kinds of pain that make people snap. But there's something that can take a pain that wouldn't normally break somebody, and it breaks somebody, which is you don't know why you're in pain. That's what pushes it over the edge for people. Because if you at least know what's going on, then you know what to do about it. But if you have no idea what's going on, you don't know what to do about it. And so then as the old W.C. Fields quote goes, if at first you don't succeed, try again. If you still don't succeed, quit. Don't be a damn fool. So, and that makes sense. And I think a lot of us have been there. You just quit because you can't see the solution. You're tired of throwing good money after bad. But if you're in a situation of, why do I keep dating the same guy? Why am I broke again? Why can't I lose the weight? And you can't come up with any answer. You just stop wisely. I think you stop investing time and money. And if somebody could just sit you down and say, aha, okay, I see the situation. Right, here's where you're stuck. And give a proper diagnosis. So that's another way to talk about this point of view business. What's your diagnosis of the symptoms? Because you might go to one doctor and they say, hi, you're dehydrated. Another one might say, no, you're just not getting enough fat. Another one might say, oh, it's exercise. Another one might say, no, you're getting too much water. You're getting too much fat. You're getting too much exercise. So isn't that strange? People can have all these different opinions about the same thing. And so what people are craving is a kind of context that makes sense and a map that actually works. And I think map is a very good rendering of it, because it's if you're lost in a town, most people, you've had that. If you've traveled, you're in a place, you don't speak the language, and you have to get somewhere quickly, like an airport or something, and you're desperately trying to figure out how the hell to get there and where the hell you are, and everyone you speak to speaks some other language. And then you finally find somebody who speaks at least a little bit of English, and they say, oh, it's easy. You see, you just go down there to where the church used to be. And then you're like, whoa, where the church used to be? Yeah. And then you turn, and it's easy. Could you just write this down? Could you draw a map or something? No, it's no problem. It's no problem. Look, you just go down, and you're almost weeping with exasperation and frustration at they don't get it. And what you're craving is somebody to literally come by and say, oh, happen to have a map on? Here's one I'll buy at the corner store. Yeah, you're here, and you want to be here, and you don't want to go this way because that's construction, and this bus will take you, or you can walk there in 5 minutes, and you'd almost weep with relief. Thank you. Oh my God, thank you so much. And this is what so many of us want in our lives, and we get so seldom. The maps that we're given, we know that the map is not the territory, but it's got to be close enough that it's functional, and it's often not. We're often given maps that are so inaccurate, and so you keep getting lost. But then, of course, the worst part is we blame ourselves. And we say, oh, it must be me. Something's wrong with me that I can't make this work. When really the map was missing some very significant components to it. If somebody comes to me, let's say with marketing, oh, God, I can't market, and it must just be me, and I'm manifesting on my self-worth. And I look at the business, I say, or you got no niche. You've got a terrible business model. This is solvable. And once people see it, there's this, now I know, well, I just have to do that? Yeah, it's actually just that easy. And then they do it, and it happens. But this can be spun in a lot of ways. Anyways, there's a lot of parasitical, predatory things that can be done to people then. How you need the course on, self-worth and believing in yourself. And sometimes you do need that. But sometimes it's not about that. So people really want to know what's the correct diagnosis, what's the cause of my symptoms. And this is the heavy lifting, and I know I'm going on, so I'll try to amble my way to a close at some point here. But there's a fellow who I learned a lot from in marketing, Jay Abraham. He writes these very long sales letters that are very effective, that sell very well. And it wasn't until I'd actually already, I think, maybe even written the book or the first draft, that it occurred to me that this was what Jay Abraham was doing. In his sales letters, he was educating people about his point of view. He was making the case not for people to hire him or buy from him. He was making the case for a certain perspective. And then the grace note was, and here's the pitch. And that is fundamentally what a good intro workshop should be. That's what a good sales letter should be, or a good book. I mean, if you've ever read a book and you realize the whole book is just them bragging about themselves and kind of pitching their services, that's not a real book. And if you read a sales letter like that, in marketing, there are these three things: relevance, credibility, value, or as fellow Jeffrey Davis said it better than I did, problem, premise, promise. And so the sales letter, of course, you got to name the problem. And you got to make a promise. Of course, you got to name the relevant thing. Have the empathy. And then you've got to communicate what the value is, what the offer is. You've got to offer some guidance of here's how I can help you. So you got to name the problem. You got to name the promise. But what most sales letters leave out is the premise. And most intro workshops, the shitty ones we've been to, are the ones where it's at best a third. The really bad ones is it's all problem and then promise. Hey, are you struggling with this? Let me stick the knife in, have it hurt more. Let me share lots of stories that don't really elucidate the point of view fully. And then if you want to get the real stuff, sign up. Or if it's a little bit better, it's a third. And so the content, you thought you were coming to an evening where it would be all content, but the first third of it is them telling their sob story and how they turned it around, their hero's journey, that people don't care about that much. And then the last third is them sharing the pitch. And a third is this kind of extreme truncation of their point of view. And again, you got to learn the real thing. And what my pitch would be is have maybe 5% of it be the articulation of the problem. My guess is the name of your workshop has actually already done that. You can just get on with it. And then 5% of it is the pitch. But then, so what's the rest of it? Your point of view. That's most of it. Is you're saying, look, this is my take. Because then when you do get to the pitch and the shameless plug portion of the evening, you can just say, look, if this makes sense to you, if this resonates with you, then here's how you sign up. Because if people are leaning in to your point of view throughout the evening, they're just like, wow, that makes so much sense. And then you do a really terrible pitch. They still want to talk to you. They'd still be interested. But if they're leaning out, and I think what a pile of horse shit. This is useless. What a bunch of garbage. So naive. Whatever their judgment is, they're leaning out. And then you do the best pitch anyone has ever given in the world. The mayor of Pitch Town comes, gives them an honorary key to the city. It doesn't matter because the point of view, see what I'm saying? So it's so central. It's so fundamental. And it's so poorly done and so fuzzy for most entrepreneurs I see.
Yeah, I must admit, when you described it as a map, and you kind of, correct me if I'm wrong here, because I'm definitely going to give my own take on what I've heard you say, but it was when you said there is a kind of, not a like for like, but a real overlap between a niche and a map. And I really got that then, like how important that is, not just so that you've got a group of people to pitch to, but that you actually really get their lived experience. And in fact, it's probably very akin to your own lived experience, your own story, what you've seen about the world. And it suddenly then made sense, like why that is much more than just like a group of people. It includes all of that as well, all their story, how they got to where they are and why they might want to go somewhere else. It really brought it to life for me, seeing it as a map. So that made such a difference to me. It really did. And feels, just feels more, I don't know, in integrity, like more human than just seeing it as this kind of faceless group of people that we're describing as a niche. It just feels, again, much more like embedded in lived experience of us and people like us. Often that's, again, who we're working with is people like us, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, often the case, especially for service providers, particularly in the dealing with life coaches. Often, our deepest wound is a doorway to our truest niche. That seems to be a very true thing often.
Yeah.
And so, the thing about a map is there's stuff you will see on a map that you recognize. That's a true thing. You're in Paris. Oh, the Eiffel Tower. I've heard of that. Or, there's this street. Oh, I'm on that street, So there's stuff that is recognizable to you. But if the map is any good, it probably has a bunch of stuff you've never seen before. So that's the difference between the diagnosis and the symptoms. Because if you go to them and you say, well, here's my take, and they think, my mom told me the same thing. She didn't charge me $50.
Yeah.
And, what's the point? You have to have something to say that's actually worth hearing. And
yeah, I guess the whole point of it being a map. It isn't just literally you are here. It's you are here and here's all the surroundings.
Bingo. Yeah, because you may want to go a lot of different places. Now, there may be a map for a particular journey, but still, it's not just... you're going to have some peripheral stuff on it, and the peripheral stuff is often more important because that's the landmarks, and that's the things you may need to know, where to get supplies along the way, etc. And when you said the integrity thing, that's my experience of it. Is because fundamentally, what so much marketing does is say, "Hey, trust me." And what point of view, so it's saying, hey, you got this problem? Well, let me make you a promise and just trust me. I can fulfill on it. You have this issue? Here's the offer. Trust me. And there's a lot of tactics to do that. There's testimonials and social proof. There's all sorts of copywriting techniques to engender this trust. But what point of view marketing says is, hey, I trust you. How about this? I'll just share my take on it. If that resonates with you, I trust you can make an adult decision for yourself of whether this is a fit or not. But I trust you. So there's no need to push. There's no need for pressure. But of course, in so much of the marketing I see, there's this fundamental mistrust of people and lack of belief that they could make their own wise decisions. And in fact, it's I've heard people, people are indecisive, so you have to make a decision for them. And all this rationalization for manipulation. And so instead of that, what we're just saying is I'll just tell you everything. And then people say, well, wait, Tad, if you tell them everything, what are you going to be able to charge for it? Well, so first of all, there's probably a lot of everything. So yeah, some of it is for the paid people, but there's a certain 30,000 foot analysis or view that can be given away. And even quite a bit of detail can be given away. You could, frankly, give it all away. And as long as you have the business model to support it, because what would happen is people would say, this is great, but how do I translate it to my situation? It's not like I haven't put out a lot of free stuff about niche. I've put out a lot. And yet, even once people have consumed that all and gestated on it, it's not always immediately apparent how that translates. They still wonder, well, what's my niche? Or they get overwhelmed with too many ideas and they still need some guidance. So it's this empathy, context, guidance. You can express empathy. Yeah. You can give the context, and people will still at certain points say, well, could you just walk me through?
The guidance, yeah. It's a choice, isn't it? Again, like you're saying, it's an adult choice. And some people will, given the context, think, you know what, I can actually work this one out for myself. Yeah. Or they can choose to invest in the guidance. Something just came to mind, which I hadn't seen actually until I was just listening to you then, which was before Jonathan and I, my business partner, took the segue into what we do now. We came from a particular kind of spiritual community, and I just really saw in what you were saying that I noticed like a large percentage of our clients come from that community, even though what we do now is quite different.
Yeah.
And it's just really suddenly made sense from what you're talking about, that what we're able to do is understand like where they've got, like how they got to where they are, as in, and not in a dismissive way, not as in that was a rubbish path, but as in that was a path with heart. It made real sense. It created this benefit. And if you're now looking to get from this island to the next island, here's what we know about it. And I've never quite seen it as clearly as that before, that it's like, because we have the deep knowledge of that path that led them to where they are, there is a sort of inherent trust that we also then will know about what comes next. Which seems now through the lens of what you're saying, it's like, of course, but I'd never seen it quite as clearly as that before until I heard you talking about it.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, just to reflect, what I heard is basically what you're saying is, so, you were a part of the spiritual community, you had this experience, and yet there were certain symptoms that appeared that were troubling, certain things that didn't work for you, and that didn't make sense. Because, wait, the spiritual community is so hip, it's so complete, and yet there seems to be something missing, and I can't even put my finger on it. I don't know what it is. There's certain ththings I'm wanting that this doesn't seem to be giving me. I don't even know why. And that's a maddening place to be for people.
Yes.
Is I can't figure out why I am stuck. I thought I'd found it. I thought this was, the promised land, and then it isn't. And so when somebody can say, well, here's why, here's what's going on, let me give a label to your experience. Let me name the thing. Oh God, that's it. That's exactly what it is. It's missing this, or it has this dynamic which isn't healthy, or etc. And then that's what empowers people to then pivot or make a change. Because until you've done the diagnosis, then every prescription is likely to be wrong. And so this is, to me, the thing I'm banging on about so much with point of view is you have to get the diagnosis right. People are counting on you to get the diagnosis right. But why would they trust you? A lot of people have weird diagnoses for things, and here's what's really going on. So that's why you have to make the case. It's like, look, of course you don't trust me. This world is full of shysters. So let me make the best case I can that this diagnosis is accurate. Oh God, there's a lot of directions we could go there, but certainly with physical health, you name the condition, and if in 5 minutes on Google, we could find 10 different diagnoses for it of what's really going on. This is a viral thing. No, it's bacterial. No, it's actually toxicological. No, it's genetic. No, it's emotional. No, it's a combination of those things. And so people really want and it really is, when I say people cry, that's not exaggeration. If it hurts bad enough and they've been struggling for years and someone finally says, here, it's like the keys to the kingdom.
Oh, yeah. I completely see that. In fact, you just made me see another thing about this. It's a bit like that saying of, to a man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And I think when someone's invested a lot of time, energy, money in a specific field, let's say, which may have, again, had real benefit to have got them to where they are. And this is true. The reason I was thinking of it specifically, again, from the spiritual kind of tradition I came from, but it's also true of anything. It could be paleo, it could be, hypnosis, anything. And I think from within that community of wherever that thing is, people will keep saying, but you're not doing the thing well enough. You need to double down and do this thing more, which again is so maddening when they're like, I've invested years of my life to do more of this one thing. And yes, it got me here, but like, is that the answer? Like, I just need to keep doing more of it. And again, I can see now much more clearly why in our position, being able to say to people that have come from that kind of, any kind really of some spiritual background that speaks to unity, non-duality, and says, that has, again, it's not to in any way dismiss that, but if you've still got, and a lot of the people we work with, it tends to be a struggle to create really like deep, intimate relationships, which is often a struggle when you're trying to say like, none of this is real, it's all an illusion. It doesn't make for the juiciest of relationships. And so from understanding, like, it's not in any way to dismiss or diminish the benefits of understanding our non-separation. And yeah, if we want to create a gorgeous relationship with another human being, we kind of need to honor our separation to make it even work. Otherwise, how the hell are we going to create relationship in an embodied, juicy way? So that's, again, that's really making sense to me how, for those people, again, the clients that come to us because that's where they are, they want to kind of create a relationship or transform their relationship, when all they've been told is you just need to see the nature of reality more deeply, and they've kept trying to do that and it's not working. That's incredibly frustrating. So to be able to say like, there's that and there's now this that we can show you, it does literally make people cry for the reasons you're saying.
Well, and that makes me think, I don't know if you know the work of Bill Plotkin.
Yes, our work's actually very inspired and influenced by his work. Love it.
Okay. So you know this is whole the analogy he gives of the tree of where he says, there's the branches of the tree, and that's the upper world, that's the spiritual, we're all one, and light, and then that's the trunk, and that's the middle world, and that's the day-to-day grind, that's the taxes, and that's nonviolent communication and getting triggered and eating healthy and exercise, and then there's the roots, which is this soul world, the underworld. And so what's very useful about that is that's a map. What I just laid out is a map of 3 different territories. And of course, the more you can articulate each one, you can realize, oh, I remember being there. Yeah, I remember that experience I had of oneness. Oh, you're saying that was the, oh, that makes sense. Oh, taxes, I know that. That's the middle. Oh, and that 6-year depression I had. Oh, yeah, that was the underworld. I get it. So people can start to see where they are. And then, of course, that's the very rough sketch. But then you could say, well, in the underworld, here are the elements there. Then it can be the Venn diagrams, or here's the pyramid, or here's the story, or it's like a river, and and isn't this true when we talk about the underworld, how much mythology, we'll talk about like the river Styx or something, and this the waters of forgetfulness. And so there's a lot of stuff that you start hearing and say, oh, this all makes sense. And that's what people are craving, is some context, because it really is maddening to just feel like you're in a random universe where nothing makes sense, and therefore you are powerless. And of course you feel rage. And why? Because most anger comes from helplessness. Yeah. And people feel totally powerless. So when you can say, no, you can do something about it, here's what it is. And this is the importance is, because what I just said with the tree analogy, somebody can say, oh, that makes sense. And they run with that and start a personal growth business based on literally just the level of understanding I said. But what people are counting on is that we have a very nuanced understanding of it, well articulated, and articulate that etymology, meaning something about joints and how things fit and hang together. And so it's, there's these 3 levels, phases or whatever, of point of view. And at the very first stage, it's this, it's simplistic. So what I gave you, that rendering a Bill Plotkin thing, is of course incredibly simplistic. I'm leaving out tons. I'm leaving out almost all of it. Level 2 is it gets complicated. So, level 1, you were on the mountaintop and everything looked so clear from the mountaintop. But then stage 2, you're down in the valley and you're trying to even remember which mountaintop were you at and what did you see from there. And it doesn't look the same anymore. Now you're in the muck, and it's very confusing because you're having to rebuild that map from the ground. And then stage 3 is it's simple, but not simplistic anymore. And this is what we're aiming for with our point of view, is we create something really simple and beautiful. But if challenged on it and pushed on it, and well, what about this? We have answers.
Yes. Oh, I can give you such a lovely example that I think speaks to what you're, correct me if I haven't, but it's what came up to me. So I noticed that people, women especially, because a lot of the kind of courses I run are for women in particular, and they'll often be drawn into those courses without me giving huge amounts of that detail away. And so I guess that's just like inherent in the way I'm talking about it. There's a kind of trust built up that there is some depth there, even though I'm not necessarily spelling it out. And then it's not until they'll be in the program, and then it's what happened. I'm running a program at the moment called Unraveling the Body, which is women kind of getting embodied and working through, developing their felt sense, that kind of thing. And again, as usual, there's a number of people from that spiritual tradition who have made their way there that are in this kind of like wrestle, like, what am I doing here? Talking about the body doesn't exist. And so I got asked a question about that on a couple of calls ago, and be able to then give that kind of more top level answer of like, oh yes, so the where you've come from was about ascension, and this is about dissension. This is about going down into the body, into the soul, into the earth. And straight away that made sense. But I don't think that it's like, because I already have the depth that sort of brought them there, it kind of, they trusted enough to then get to the call and then ask that question. But that then suddenly made sense of all this stuff that they kind of had they could trusted, they had a sense of, but then suddenly understanding, oh yeah, there's ascension and dissension, they both have a place, made it all like, oh, okay, I can see now where on the map I've been and where I've got to go to.
Because if you're in the underworld, and somebody gives you a map of the upper world to navigate, if you have two choices, you can either say this map is wrong, or you can say I am wrong.
Yes.
And so you see what I'm saying? So what the two big gurus will say is you're wrong. Another term for that, gaslighting. They'll say, no, you're wrong. You're not seeing the territory clearly enough. But no, nothing on this map matches what I'm seeing. Well, you gotta look harder. You gotta versus. And somebody says, it's like, oh yeah, mate, you're in the underworld. Here's a map, and suddenly you look at the map. It's like, I'm right here. Oh my god, that's the thing over there. It's on the map. Oh shit, that's the river over there, and those are the demons over there. It's all on the map. This is incredible. It's, people just want to laugh, and just like the thrill of having a map that finally makes some sense of the damn thing.
Yeah, you can just see the relaxation kind of like come about people's being, like, oh yes, this is okay, I'm allowed to do this. There's a real permission giving, actually. That's what I really noticed. It's like, oh, it's safe to travel here because I can now see where I am and kind of what's next. So I'm loving this conversation because I'm seeing so much more deeply as we're talking than I had already got from it. What I do want to make sure that we how are we doing for time? Oh my goodness, we're running short of time, and I really want to make sure we get into the depth of some of this. So the thing that really stood out to me with the way that you work with point of view versus all of the other, we have over the years spent so much time trying to be able to like ground and articulate what we do in a way that can, make sense to other people. It's like, we know what we do and why we do it, but it seems really hard to like then raise that into the light in a way that we can share with people coherently and consistently. Yeah. And it took me a while. I got really frustrated by the compass level. I kept on, why is he called it a compass? It seemed like there was this, I'd read why you call it a compass, and I'd go back to try and make sense of like what we do from that point of view, and then I'd lose it again, like, why is it called a compass? Anyway, where it finally started to make sense, and I did this real kind of like reverse engineering job on what we do and why. And then kind of came back up at it from a point of view, oh, now it makes sense why it's a compass. So there's a line that I've made a note of that you said in your ebook, which was, your compass is what you use to set whatever route you choose and to make sure you're on track as you go. And it was that line, for some reason, that finally made me go, got it, okay. You don't even need to think. I think there was something about it being a compass and it kind of having like one thing that kept making me get confused again. But that suddenly made me click like, oh gosh, yes, like that's what from understanding why you might want to take a particular route. The route comes next, but there is kind of like, why are you choosing that route? And suddenly that started to make sense. So from there, we were suddenly able, we had like all this bunch of stuff that we take people through, like embodiment, like shadow work, like polarity work, for example. And we were really struggling to understand, like, what's the compass and what's the route? And we were really like mixing them up. And from there, I could understand, like, what we're really about is helping people to live from soul, open their hearts, and become sovereign, like free themselves from conditioning so they can make sovereign choices over the direction of their life. And suddenly that was like, that's our kind of guiding principles. That's what we're about. And from there, it's clear the route are the things that we take people through to get them there, like embodiment, like shadow work. So that suddenly was like, that created this illumination that now seems really obvious, but just wasn't available before. It was like, there are kind of like principles of why what we see works, what helps people create lives of meaning. And now we get that, we can then map that, like the route is that, as you say, that kind of how you get from A to B. It's not that even we're saying this is the only route, but it's the route that we know works really well. And we've walked and we've taken many clients through, and it looks like this. And so suddenly that made this challenge that we've been in for so long, like within, I'm not kidding, days, it was just like, oh my God, we've got it now, finally at last. So first of all, thank you so much. But what do you, in hearing me say that, what do you think really, what's the difference between the way you're talking about this compared to all the other ways that people talk about kind of like creating your mechanism, creating your method, articulating what you do? What do you think there is in what you're doing that creates that difference?
Well, I don't know, honestly, because I don't know all the other approaches. So you might even know better than I do. But I'll hazard a guess from the little I know on those things is, so, what you're referencing is what I sort of loosely call the point of view pyramid. And the idea is that the foundation of that pyramid is the map. The next level up, maybe 40% of it is the compass, and then the tip would be the route. So I'm mixing metaphors, but I'm taking nautical metaphors, like navigational, mixing them with this structural of the pyramid. But the most important thing is the map. If you're going to get anywhere and you're going to have one thing, the map is just very, very the most useful. Because even if you get lost, at least you can know where the hell you are when you're lost. If you take the wrong way, I see. Now I see the castle. We're here. Okay, now I know where we generally have to go. And you could probably use the sun, to get some sense of direction, at least loosely. Although, that's depending on what latitude or you are, that the sun isn't always rising in the east exactly or setting in the west, so that can cause some trouble. But with a map, that's the most important thing. Now the compass is just, to me the compass is, you're at a bar with a friend who helps people with the thing you're struggling with, and you're drunk and frustrated. You say, what do I do? And they say, look, there's a bigger conversation here, but here are the three big ideas. If you just keep these things in mind, you'll at least be going in the right direction. You're having troubles with your spouse. Okay, look, just try this for the week. Just seek to understand before seeking to be understood. Just have that be your mantra. You see what I'm saying? And it gives you at least a direction. It gives you is it going to get you exactly to the goal you want? Probably not alone, but you'll be in the neighborhood. At least, if literally imagine standing somewhere. Somebody says, well, look, as the crow flies, it's north by northeast. You see that direction over there? If you just kept going in that direction, you basically get there. Now, of course, that's not the best way to get there because the territory is a little unruly and there's lakes and mountains and easy to get lost. But so the compass would at least help you. So then the route is, Google Maps, turn here, turn here, turn here. But the challenge is with maps, even with Google Maps, they're not always up to date. And sometimes there are developments and things have changed on the territory. And Sometimes there's a different route you want to take. So the route doesn't always work. And this is the tip of the pyramid. It's like 1% of it. But this is the thing I see most people get so excited about. They say, well, I figured out my system. I figured out my signature approach. I figured out my whatever these things are called, meaning the steps. But we all know that at best, a pre-prescribed generic set of steps is just kind of a best fighting chance. But it doesn't acknowledge the nuance of the situation, which is where the principles come in. And so to kind of simplify it in a way, to me, the map is descriptive, whereas the route is prescriptive. The map is just saying, this is how it is. It's like this, whereas the route is saying, and here's what you do. And the compass is kind of somewhere in between. There's a loose syntax for the ideas, but it's not quite so exact. And so, but I would say this is I want to give you the etymology of a word. This is something I should probably put in the books. I'm just going to go grab this book. So this is a book called The Shepherd's Life by a guy named James Rebanks, who's a shepherd from the Lake District up in England. And why I read a book about shepherding in the Lake District.
Might come in handy one day.
Well, for this interview. So, anyways, the cover was interesting. But the thing that really struck me is in the beginning, there's this page where it talks about the etymology of this word hefted. And so I'm going to give the what it says. It says heft. Noun, Northern England, a piece of upland pasture to which a farm animal has become hefted. Number 2, an animal that has become hefted thus. Verb, transitive, Northern England and Scotland. Of a farm animal, especially a flock of sheep, to become accustomed and attached to an area of upland pasture. Adjective, hefted, describing livestock that has become thus attached. Etymology, from the Old Norse heft, meaning tradition. So this is a strange mystery because you have a word that clearly means all those things. It means tradition, means becoming accustomed to a piece of farmland. It means also related to taking the sheep out to that piece of land. But it also clearly means weight. This is the way we would use it. That person's words have heft. And so that's the kind of doorway I want to go through around this. So you say somebody's words have heft. It's a certain kind of gravitas, a certain sort of substance that they have to them, which seems to translate into a kind of trust. When we say somebody's words have heft, we usually mean it in a trustworthy sense, not the opposite. And so, it could be negative, but it's mostly positive. And so we've got tradition, we've got weight, we've got becoming accustomed to land, but also if you look at the etymology of the word heft, you'll find it's also connected to heath and heather. So it's the land itself too. And
I feel like I know where you're going, and then I'd be interested to know if I've gone completely left field or it's the same direction.
Well, I'd be curious to hear what's already landing for you from that.
I'd never thought of this before, but as you're talking, I'm feeling like this is a sense of their words are grounded in something. They're not just kind of in the moment, grabbed from the air. They're grounded in depth and, I guess, tradition and principles. It was the word grounded that suddenly came to me then.
Yeah, I would say it's very much, it's, and just to grab another word, the word soothsayer, the root of this is soth, which means kind of, it's the same with the word soothing, but I think it has to do with vows as well. And the soothsayer, we think of them as somebody who tells the future, kind of divination, that here's what's coming. But divination, I think more traditionally understood, was not so much there's like the second sight or something like that, which is specifically seeing the future. But divination was some other thing. Divination was a kind of extreme attention to the present. And the understanding that the present has its own mandate. It's an interesting thing to know the English language, which is Germanic in its roots, doesn't have a future tense. There is no future tense in the English language, which is kind of mind-blowing. You can only get to the future by speaking about I will or I shall. So there's a kind of volition in it.
Is that not typical for languages then?
Oh, there are languages that have a future tense, yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah, a direct future tense. And English is just not one of those. German isn't one of those. So I think German might have had a future tense. Anyways, so what we're saying is this divination was looking at the present and saying, kind of, what is it wanting? What is it needing? And what's likely to come? What are the patterns that are here now? And what's the most likely trajectory of them?
Yes.
And so when a soothsayer would say, here's what I see, the words would be soothing, even if they were hard to hear, because they're so honest. It's the soothsayer is kind of bearing faithful witness to how it is. And people are so craving this. People are so craving to have somebody just say it like it is and not candy coat it, not sugar coat it, not make it worse than it is. But that's when the words get heft, because what they're saying is, look, I've spent a lot of time on this territory that we're talking about. And so let me report what that territory is really like and what's happening on that territory. You know, I've lived in this community for a long time. And this is the role of elders. And I've seen a lot of things and I've seen a lot of patterns. And I just want to report what I'm seeing now. And so there's no advice in it. There's no suggestion of what to do. It's just a reportage. And this is, you know, so if you have a tradition of spending time on this land, if you've been there a lot, if that's a part of your tradition, of course you have some qualification on reporting in it. And in my experience, people can feel it. And so what I'm begging of people is don't just come up with a route. Great. You got your step 1, 2, through the 7 steps to this, the 5 steps to that. I mean, it's fine. It's great. And it's the sexiest part of the thing. That's the thing that people say they want. But make sure it's rooted, that it has some heft to it. Make sure you've spent some time on the territory yourself, mapping it out and coming to understand it. And this is, of course, where apprenticeship would come from, which we've so utterly lost, is you have a tradition of a certain people who've been studying a certain art or craft for generations. And so there's an accumulated body of knowledge there. You know, they've become hefted to that craft. You know, this family or this community. And so then there's an immense love for it and there's an immense understanding of it. So you don't get that if you just focus on the steps. You really have to understand the map. And what is the map based on? I mean, when you look at this pyramid, well, you've got the map, the compass, the route. But what is the map on? Well, it's on the territory. You know, that pyramid is sitting on land. And so it's got to be faithful to life. Because everyone's tired of bullshit philosophies. Everyone's tired of another theory, another abstract idea that sounds really good, but it doesn't work, and it has to work. If it doesn't work, you've got nothing.
I just actually seen something else that I hadn't realised until you've just said it then, which I guess... answers the question. I'm totally not saying that your work is only powerful for me because I'm me, just to be clear. I just think I've suddenly seen why it was so powerful for me. I wrote a post on this a couple of weeks ago, which was for a number of reasons, not least my upbringing. I was really encouraged to not cling to like one way of seeing things and think that's the way and be dogmatic about it. I was really encouraged to kind of play devil's advocate, be open-minded, see kind of every eventuality. And what I really loved about the way that you talk about point of view, it doesn't need you to cling dogmatically onto saying like, this is the truth. It actually respects like the territory is the territory. And all you can ever do is then kind of create your own sense of like what that map is. Not ever saying like this is. I think there is a real again, particularly in spiritual traditions, there is a real pitfall in constantly thinking the map is the territory. And, the old kind of fingers point to the moon saying kind of also points to that, where it's really human to think that we are pointing to truth as a capital T, when actually all we're ever doing is pointing to a map. And so as you're talking, I'm like, I think there was a real relief in me to recognize, like, I don't have to suddenly pretend that this is the way and this is the one way, and I'm gonna, like, swear that this is all there is. Like, for me, there was a real grace in being able to say, like, as far as I can see it, this is the map, and then as far as I can see it, these are helpful principles to create this transformation you want. And this is my sense of the route that I've walked and I love to walk and I love to take clients through. It's not the only one. But there was real kind of softness and grace. It's grounded in the way you're saying, but there's also a kind of like, these are the patterns I've seen, and yet they're only ever patterns. Can never be the underlying reality, because we can only ever point to that via a map.
Yeah. And the way that the map and the compass and the route, they have to work. They have to be functional. This is so important. That's, to me, this is maybe a good place to amble towards a close. Is
one of us has to try.
This whole wondering about how the hell do we know what's true? Well, one of the things we can say for sure is popularity is a terrible criterion. Just because an idea is popular in a small group or in society really means almost nothing. And in fact, is often an indictment of the thing. Because for something to become mainstream, well, we live in a very sick society. And so if it's been accepted by a very sick society, what that means is it's no threat to the sickness. It's no threat to the oppression. As soon as an idea gets mainstream, just watch out. It has been so utterly defanged, so completely neutered, that it will not threaten and it will not be generative in any way. It will just, it's now suddenly become enlisted, which is a real heartbreak for people who've been a part of major movements, to see their movements co-opted. You're a part of the anti-globalization protest, and then you see 5 years later Nike doing commercials using anti-globalization protest footage to sell shoes made in sweatshops. It's just maddening. And this seems to be one of the greatest capacities of modern culture, is that co-opting. No matter what you throw at it, the culture cannot be jammed, because it will just turn it, you have the V for Vendetta movie, and yes, and fight back, and let's get our masks. And well, where are those masks made? In China, in a sweatshop. And boom, they got you again. So it's really maddening to know that this can be co-opted. So popularity, not the best metric. So I'll just propose 3 other possible metrics. One is, does it work? Is it useful? Does it get the result? If people are coming to you with cancer, are they getting better or not? Is it better than the mainstream protocol, or worse? So there's got to be an effectiveness thing. Number 2, to me, there's a question of, is it beautiful? Does this add to the beauty of life? And this is a subjective, but it's not so up for debate. Humans know what's beautiful. We feel it, in us, when it's sustaining something bigger than just a utilitarian purpose. And then number 3 is it sustainable? Is it, will this work for future generations? Because, there are certain things you can do that will work in the moment. Like, I feel unhappy. We'll do some cocaine. I feel great. This is not a long-term answer, So even in our lifetimes, it's not sustainable. For future generations, it's like, oh, look, we have better health. It's like, but what did that good health come at the consequence of? The environment. So, this generation got the benefits. But you have robbed good health from future generations, because to get what you got, you had to pollute the land, air, the water. And by the way, You also took health from the current generations of the people working in your factories. And then all the effluents that go into the water and the land and the air from those factories and other countries that don't even, I mean, God, we can't even enact the laws in the so-called developed world to stop the pollution. We can barely hold it at bay, and they get away with shit all the time. And so anyway, you see what I'm saying? So is it effective? Is it beautiful? Is it sustainable? To me, these would be 3 criteria that we could be looking at all of our points of view through. Because if it doesn't check those 3, it's back to the drawing board.
Yeah.
That's my sense anyways.
You ambled to a close beautifully there. Thank you, Tad. Gorgeous. Thank you so much for this. I know you've got so many amazing offerings. Where's the best place for listeners to find out more about you, what you do? And don't hold back. If there's something particular you'd like people who are interested in learning more to go to, share that, please.
Well, that's very generous of you. But basically, marketingforhippies.com. That's my main website. And depending on when people are looking at this, if you go to marketingforhippies.com/events, you'll see I've got a 30-day point of view program that's coming up. And, I've got ebooks that I sell. And if people want to talk to me one-on-one to maybe work through what their niche or their point of view is, I do these puttering sessions. And so it's an hour long, and I'll be tidying and puttering around my house while we talk. You can go to marketingforhippies.com/puttering. And then on YouTube, if you just type Tad Hargrave on YouTube, you'll see I've got a channel, and there's probably about 500 videos up of just free content that people can check out. On a blog with 700 blog posts. Anyways, there's lots of stuff out there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And again, I've thought, I've been a fan of what you do and how you do it for ages. But again, having looked a bit more deeply into it recently, I can absolutely recommend what you're up to. So yeah, I really encourage listeners to go check out your stuff. Thank you so much, Tad. Really enjoyed this. In fact, as I mentioned earlier, I think I'll be booking one of those puttering sessions soon. I love the idea of that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wow, what a great show. Here are my top takeaways. If we've spent any time in business and or marketing, we'll typically understand that we'll need to articulate both the problem and the promise. But what tends to be missing is the premise, which is at the heart of our point of view. Your point of view is your map of how things are, your understanding of why that is the case, and your sense of a recommendation of how best to make the journey from island A to island B. I love how Tad's idea of a map includes what we might typically call a niche, but is much deeper than that. It includes where your people are, how they got there, and where they could go from here. And this allows people to understand why they're in the pain they're in. It's a diagnosis rather than just a description of their symptoms. And that understanding of why they're where they are is so powerful all on its own. The more deeply we understand our point of view and that our map isn't the territory, the less dogmatic and defensive we can be about it. We no longer have to wield it as the truth. We can offer it generously and gracefully as our point of view and a path that we've seen has heart. I love the 3 metrics that Tad suggested we can use to measure our points of view. Does it work? Is it beautiful? And is it sustainable? Love that. So if you would like to get notes and links for everything we spoke about this week, hop on over to the show notes, and they are at primalhappiness.co/episode 284. And if you don't want to miss out on next week's episode, head on over to Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, or your Android or iOS app of choice, and hit that subscribe button. That way you'll get each episode delivered straight to your device as soon as it's released. Thank you so much for listening. You've been wonderful. Catch you again next Tuesday.